Okay,
Over here, so I can see them.
it is 6 o'clock. We're gonna call this meeting to order right now. It doesn't look like we have a lot of outsiders in the queue. I don't know. Do we have anybody else on
Yes.
Zoom?
Yes, you have, you could do a roll call so they could pop up, but you do have Chris Epley, Brian Nichols, Chris Einmo, online. Also online, you have Ken Woodward, Denny Nielsen.
Sounds like a lot of Marion County folks and Detroit folks too. All right, very good. Welcome, everybody. I'm gonna start off tonight's meeting with a roll call of board members. So Janet, would you do the roll call, please?
Want to do an introduction of the roll call?
Well, sure, if we can. Let's-
Okay, Mr. Woodward.
Who? Yeah, I'm here.
Now, could you do a quick introduction of yourself, sir?
Ken Woodward, representative for Detroit, vice chair. Welcome aboard.
Mr. Nielsen,
Present.
want to do a quick introduction, please?
We have a new board member.
You're very muffled.
Do you want to do a quick introduction for our new member?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm Denny Nielsen and I'm with the City Council in Detroit as well as the NSSA.
Mr. Kirsch,
Tim Kirsch, President, Mill City Mayor, Board Chair, NSSA.
Mr. Evans,
Ron Evans, treasurer of NSSA and council member, City of Gates.
Ms. Schofield,
Emily Schofield. I am on the city council with the city of Gates, and I'm not sure yet what my role is with the NSSA, other than I'm here to help support it.
A representative of the city of Gates. We have 4 communities on board. Each community has 2 representatives. Currently, IDEN only has 1, as they're looking for a replacement representative also.
Okay.
So each board member, each city has same voting power in the whole sewer authority realm. That's the way it was all designed.
and we met when you came in. I'm Janet Zienthal. I'm on Mill City Council. I am the secretary for this group. And Mr. Moreno is out, absent. What's that? You want to do introductions, everybody?
Might as well, go ahead and, I'd like to have everybody, introduce themselves to our new representative from the city of Gates, and that's gonna be Emily Schofield here. So Scott, if you would. Sure.
Scott Datsun, Executive Director of Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments.
Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Connery. I'm the project manager. I think we met Thursday. Yeah. Brian?
I'm Brian Nicholas. I'm the Marion County Public Works Director and shepherding this effort on behalf of the county.
Chris Einmo, I'm the project manager for Marion County Public Works.
I'm Chris Epley. I'm the Community Services Department Director. Just listening in.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. For the board, I would like to ask anybody that has any potential conflicts of interest that they might recognize at this time to state so for the record. And if there's nothing at this time, but something comes up later in the meeting that could be considered a conflict of interest, please speak up then and let us get that on record. Announcements. Does anybody have any announcements that they would like to make? No announcements in particular. Then we'll move on to public comment and questions. Pretty light on public participation today. So we don't have to worry about that. So we're going to scoot right on into our work session. And we had with us the discussion of operational plan. So now we've had a few different, I want to say, versions and revisions and stuff like that of our operational plan. And I read through it a couple of times while I was, on a road trip recently. And Ron had a couple of good points that he brought up in that. But, I think I'm gonna ask Ron to explain a little bit of what you're thinking. And we need to come up with how should we say it, the way we want to present the operational plan. Now, I know that Marion County is also, has some things, and we want to make sure that we work together and everybody's on the same page. We just want to make sure that we have documentation that this is all going to be affordable to us, and that we're all able to work together in this timeline, and that we have to meet. So, discussions on the operational plan, I guess. Ron, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Very first thing, it turns out that we have generated a conflict because Marion County or the Mill City, the new plan is a very specific operational plan requirement for their permits, so they can't have two operational plans. So we decided to rename ours to the NSA strategic plan.
Strategic plan. Words matter.
The recent emphasis we've been placing on is on the idea of forming an operational plan for the NSSA so that we can get an organization in place that can receive assets down the road. The general emphasis on that right now is to get the legal team on board to analyze the 4-city project solution. And there's been a thought along the lines of, in addition to that, we tasked them with first actually coming up with a simplified intergovernmental agreement plan that would get us something in place until the final plan gets there. And if we could have the legal team do both of that, they could structure a simplified IGA that could be morphed into a full 4-city plan. And the one risk that I personally think is involved in this is if we develop the 4-city plan over time and then we present it to the 4 cities, for whatever reason at all, they don't adopt it, we would actually be right back where we are right now. So if we first did a simplified, got it in place, we could go to the people and say, now we do have a plan, a structured plan in place. We can receive funds. We can now aggressively go after the remaining funds for phase 1 and phase 2 funds. Saying we have a structure in place to receive things, so that isn't a question anymore. So there's a benefit, I think, from that, and just in the fact showing Marion County and the people that they outline that we are actually doing something. We're doing concrete steps. I think there's a value to doing a very quick IGA with Mill City and NSA, as Mill City being the owner-operator of phase 1 particularly. And that's something we can discuss and what your feelings are on that. To get the other part of that, we could, right now, the legal team funding is tied up with Marion County having to approve funding and get it through to the call. We could guarantee that with our funds because according to Chris, it has been approved by Marion County. It's just a structural problem getting it through. So if we use our funds to guarantee payment, we could get the legal team started immediately. And if the funds were available before they invoiced for their services, then it would be available. If not, we could pay it and then they would reimburse us later down the road, but that will get the legal team started now. And, so anyway, that's kind of the questions that are put forward right now. We need discussion on and come to some kind of agreement on that thing.
I agree with you a lot about we do need to get the attorneys involved and stuff like that when it comes to our IGAs and things like that. I see personally the cogs and the wheels are still turning, and we don't have, I think, a definite what the operational plan is completely yet. I don't know. I still see some things being hashed out. I know that Marion County's working diligently on all those aspects, but we don't even have the approved treatment plant or anything yet. So until we have those things in place, I don't know, is it possible even to have our operational plan completely, or a strategic plan? That's right. So the operational plan is still in the Marion County Court, and it's a strategic plan for us at this time.
Yes, and what we're doing is we're trying to get an idea when it is completed or through the call or whatever, they have an actual operation or a plan for us moving forward. We'll have an idea how to address it. If instead of just wait until it comes and then start looking at it, we know what the general shape of it will be. And we can get ready for that and get ahead of the game, I think. But that, again, that's up for discussion.
So speaking of discussion, Ken, Danny, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or?
Well, yeah, this is
Go
Ken.
ahead.
This is Ken. I don't know what Marion County is going to require for
DEQ is going to require of Marion County or all the above, yeah.
for a
So-
set contract. So I think that if we agree or consensus or whatever, that maybe COG should sit down with Marion County and DEQ and ask that questions, what is going to be required or in a contract to receive the facility or whatever. Maybe that's our next step, but I appreciate what Ron has drafted. It's
amazing work.
It's a lot of good.
that's an understatement. It's great work. And so, but we don't know what Marion County or DEQ is going to require.
Well, I'll go ahead and so that folks, I hope you don't mind if I jump in with some comments.
No, feel free.
Yep. Okay, keep in mind that the requirement for NSSA to produce a operational plan or a strategic plan, that's something that I asked Danielle Gonzalez to insert into the funding agreement just to make sure that it was being discussed and this group was making progress, and then that progress was reflected in conversations with each of the city councils, so that a year and a half from now or a year from now, I'm not like still sitting there, but I'm launching the construction of a plant without any groundwork laid. So what I'll say is, when it comes to the strategic plan, Marion County is going to be very flexible and understanding. It's all about getting to the finish line and bringing all this together at the right time. So I don't want this board to worry that Marion County is going to pull the rug out from under the work that you guys are doing. That's not the intent. Just the fact that that we are starting to tackle those decisions on who makes sense to operate the thing, who makes sense to own this thing, and then what's the plan of attack going to be for Detroit and Idana. That in a nutshell is going to satisfy Marion County for the time being. But we do need to finish those conversations in terms of deciding just fundamentally who it makes sense to own and operate the Mill City plant in particular. And then there's a bunch of other little decisions that go on with that. Will Gates actually consent to construction of the collection system in their city? And then if so, are they willing to, what kind of actions are they willing to take, in terms of ordinances and those kind of things? Will connection be mandatory, or will it be voluntary? Those kind of things. And if it is mandatory, under what circumstances will it be mandatory? Those are some of the more sticky questions, I think, than the strategic plan here, because it all impacts the financial feasibility of operating the system once it's built. So I don't want this group to get too caught up in worrying about the county putting on like extra demands or anything like that. Just the fact that we're making progress on this is the whole reason why that requirement is listed in the funding agreement.
The other thing that I'd like to address is we have an extension, my understanding. Laura, is that correct? Or Brian, I'll address it to you. Is that correct? We have an extension to address this legal issue?
Well, you've got a verbal commitment of an additional $80,000 in funding. You've got a balance that's unspent on your existing funding agreement. Chris Epley's department is actually managing that agreement. So I think we should turn to Chris and get the latest from him.
Chris?
We have two emails from Chris that I forwarded to the board, one with the extension of the strategic plan timeline and the other with the initial expected funding. So that's not just verbal, it's in an email.
Okay.
I would just like to keep the remaining funds that we have if Marion County has come up with some extra funds. Oh, there's Chris. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair and committee members, I've been having some discussions with Jan and with the board. As Brian mentioned, they have given verbal commitment to the $80,000 for legal services and then the $196 for continued COG staffing until the football is turned over to whoever's going to carry it across the end zone there. The piece that they have not committed to is funding the staffing and O&M for commissioning. But I think that that's a discussion that we can have later on as we get closer to commissioning. I will be meeting with the board in the first week of November. So I'm not sure if that's actually later this week or early next week to secure where that funding exactly is coming from. And then once we have it all in place, then I'll start processing an amendment to our contract or IGA with NSSA. And when we open up that IGA, I'm also going to do some work on the language in relation to the deliverables so that they more closely reflect, as Brian was talking about, just the desire for us to have continual progress forward as opposed to hard deliverables at hard dates, because we recognize this project it's complicated, it's long, and is going to be technically challenging, and hitting very specific dates with very specific pieces of it may be difficult, especially if they're written in a contract that's difficult to modify as we go forward. So I'm just going to soften up that language before I give you that contract to look at. So any other questions?
I would like to probably say, bounce off of what Brian was talking earlier about, the operations and stuff like that. Although Mill City is aware that it is a potential owner, a potential operator, potential builder, whatever, we have not had a big discussion on it at council level, and I cannot obligate the city myself just as a representative. And that's a discussion too. So when it comes time for the operational plan or even our strategic plan, we need to be able to have the elements that Mill City would be want to obligate itself to, or potentially obligate itself to, and those still are things that we have to work out yet, so. We can't, I would say, vote on a plan that says, this is the way it's gonna be, and Mill City will do this and that, because until obviously the city gets to agree on it as well, so, as well as the city of Gates too. And in their participation in the collection system up there. So we still got a lot of discussions there to go on to know the way the plant down here is gonna operate, and the way that Mill City can be involved and work with partnership with the NSSA as well as with Marion County. So we've got a lot of ongoing negotiations once we figure out what we're gonna build. So, and what it's gonna take. So that's where I'm at with that.
So we have time.
We still have time, it sounds like. This will be like planning for everything else. We can plan and plan and plan, but it's gonna boil right down to a last minute detail where we all gotta make strong, well-informed decisions. The more we talk about it leading up to there, it means we've thought about everything thoroughly in the beginning and have given a lot of consideration to all the different aspects. So nothing jumps out at us, it's new. So I think talking about it every opportunity we get for strategic planning, operational plans, things like that, gives us a broader understanding when it does come time to put it all into ink.
So maybe we can just decide our next meeting where we can make a decision that COG will sit down with Brian, Chris, both Chris Epley and Emo, and they can kind of hash out what's needed in a contract. Or
but I still think even with that, things will still morph and change a little bit from time to time. I mean, like I said, we still don't have approval of a final final concept or whatever, what the actual plant's gonna be, or resting place for it and things like that. So I see still a lot of moving parts yet that aren't good, that we've gotta have to nail down. But yes, I would encourage Marion County to have good conversations with our COG staff here to help give good, accurate information to the board so we can help make some decisions. Scott, you have something to add?
Well, I think this is an excellent discussion. I see this, what's happening right now, and thank you to Marion County and thank you to the hard work of Ron and everyone around the table. We're gonna split operation and strategic for a little bit. That operation plan is really very tied to the engineering and to all those pieces and how all of that stuff works. So we'll track that along with the county, who's tracking along with Keller and all the groups working that side of there. On the other side is where you guys are gonna start getting your hands more into the system here. And that is when we we have a clear understanding that we can get your attorneys on board who can then start to structure the agreements. And that's really the obligations of all the parties. And that's as important to the county as it is to each of your individual jurisdictions and to NSSA as a whole. So that's really the other side. And that's gonna be the part that really will start gearing up and you folks will dive into. Think about it, ownership, connectivity, obligations within it, how things are done. Those are big, hefty discussions. However, I do think with the right people at the table to assist you folks, I think you can have a good, honest conversation about how to go, and then we can chunk that and how you can take it now back to your jurisdictions and how we can help explain all the bits and parts about how they work, how they can see the whole, how they see their part in it, and talk about the alternatives. That's really where we're at right now. That is a moving thing that moves in simultaneously as they're dealing with the specifics of engineering and operations and cost structures of O&M and things like that. Then they'll come back together again. And then those agreements will marry back up. So it's not that you won't be in the middle of it, it's just they'll be over here and working that operational side while you guys are working the structural and legal and ownership and management and, you know, those things that sit over there and deal with it. So I think this is a really great opportunity, and thank you again to everybody around the table and to the county, and to your other partners in the upper basin, for being at the table. So everybody's working together. Laura, did I miss anything?
No, and I think, does Denny have something to say? I saw him lean forward, and then I know Ron does.
And I know Ron does too.
I just, one real quick, just the operational plan now that Marion County is just for the plan, period.
Yeah.
That's their plan is for the plan.
Yeah.
The rest of the facilities are
really
under our strategic plan.
Yep. I would agree with that clarification.
Would it be beneficial at all, once we get the attorneys on board, if they could come up with a list of decision items that we need to take?
Yeah, like a to-do list to go through it, yeah.
So we could go back to our boards and say, okay, here's what we need to discuss going forward and make.
Yep.
And I can update you on that. You have completed intermediate procurement, which means that you had to get 3 informal quotes from 3 law firms. And as you know, LGLG declined the big picture. And then another attorney firm also declined it. So then that leaves Cable Houston. So you are now able to select Cable Houston once the county's amended contract comes through with the funding. And when Scott and I met with Cable Houston back in August, one of the things those attorneys said, and they're very experienced with this, is we will come to your meeting with an issues list. These are the types of issues that entities like this have to make decisions about. And, you know, part of it was rate setting. Who's going to be in charge of rate setting? Ownership, financing, employment. So they had sort of a list of things that entities like this have to start making governance decisions, that entities like this have to start making decisions about. So you're aligned in thinking of the attorneys that are yet to be hired. So that's good.
So we'll begin to work those 2 sides with you folks, but expect a date to bring back to this board, especially getting ready on the strategic plan side to have those experts and those agreements to come back to the table. And the county will be there too. I mean, the county is well aware. Brian, I hope I'm not over emphasizing this, but definitely the county understands its current role as the owner of grant funds to do a project, bidding and procurement on the capital side. So it understands its role in this too, so. Danny?
Denny, you got your hand
I
up?
appreciate the discussion, and I mostly appreciate Ron's terrific work to get us focused on these issues and the clarity from Brian and Chris. The question I have at this point, because I think the way things are moving and the fact that the money we currently have has to be spent by 26, I believe, that the Upper Canyon or Project B or whatever you want to call it still is in limbo in terms of whether or not we're even going to have a permanent sewer system. So the question for me becomes, how involved, other than as voyeurs, should we be in the Upper Canyon for what's going on now? Because what's going on now really is relevant only to Mill City and Gates. And it doesn't matter what sort of an operation plan you put together, it has to address the Mill City and Gates operation and maintenance, period, until we finish our testing and further discussions about what's appropriate in terms of our residential versus our commercial district. I certainly want to stay involved. I know Ken does, and I'm sure Tony does as well. But I think we can offer our thoughts on what's going on, but until we have decisions about our home ground, I'm not sure how relevant our activities are going to be until that is decided.
Excellent, excellent observation and comments. I appreciate that, Denny. Now, I've heard, and in speaking with other board members and stuff, almost 2 sewer authorities or something like that, but I would think that it's just coming to me, I'm kind of think and talk out loud at the same time. Possibly still 1 sewer authority, but basically 2 committees on the authority, Upper Canyon and the Lower Canyon. I don't know. I want you guys to be involved in everything we do, obviously, and I think it would be cost prohibitive to have 2 separate sewer authorities. So I would think we could still act as 1 board, everybody stay involved as much as they could. I want to be involved to help assure the Upper Canyon that I am with you on getting what development you need done up there, and not disengage from anything up there, because early on I wanted to say that I'm committed to seeing that you have what it takes for Detroit to survive and for Idana to grow and prosper up there as well, because that's where it's actually came from, was the idea of putting in the sewer system in the Upper Canyon first. Mill City got involved because we were invited in because needed our population numbers to begin with, but all that stuff has changed over the years because of circumstance, wildfires, COVID, all that other stuff. So now Mill City was in the position where it needed to expand because we're at capacity and other issues, maintenance issues that we had. And I don't want it to seem like Mill City's just taking over and running away with all the money and all the funding and all the sewer and leaving everybody else out of the picture. So we want to stay involved with you guys as well. And make sure that the whole canyon survives all this, because we're stronger as 1 unit than we are as 4 separate units, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mayor Kirsch. I appreciate that. Nobody's going to think that you're running away with all the money. I mean, you've already have all the money, other than a few $1,000,000 that we have for residential and commercial assistance in Detroit, and nothing for Idana, quite frankly. But it's a great discussion. I heard this concept offered up probably a year ago, that perhaps we should have 2 NSSA groups. And whether we do or not, I think the important thing is that all of us in the Upper Canyon would like to learn from what's happening now, so that if we're blessed and have the opportunity for a permanent system in the Upper Canyon, we'll have that knowledge on board, and then we can continue to work with the Lower Canyon in terms of lessons learned and the understanding of the operations and maintenance issues, which will be important if that actually bears fruit. There was another thought, but my old brain just dumped it. Sorry.
God.
I think Janet had a question.
Ron, Jan, please.
So Janet first.
I appreciate that, Denny, I really do, but I think that we all need to stick to the group so we can make sure that we follow through and get everything we need up the canyon. I don't think of us as separate communities. I haven't for a long time, and I think we really do need to stick together and listen to each other. We know that we're in it for the long haul. That's my personal opinion. I really feel that way. So I just wanted to express that, you know, I'd like to see us stick together.
Yeah, I'd like to carry on that thing, the NSSA as a group, we should stay together, the 4 cities, for as long as we possibly can. The question becomes, when we start to set up a separate authority to assume ownership of Mill City Gates, that would actually be separate from the IGA or under IGA, that it wouldn't require your involvement. That group would be operating it more or less, I would think, myself, I've been in parallel with the NSSA. We would continue to focus on what we can do for Detroit, Idana, as well as down here, Well, the group set up to assume ownership focuses on getting the city of Gates on the road.
If I can offer just a technical point that, I've heard multiple board members, phrase something, and I think it was Scott and I's fault. That when we talk about setting up the joint venture, your existing structure is the joint venture. So you already have that piece in place. And I know Ron knows this because he and I talked about this earlier. I think the part that we just need to explain better, and the attorneys will come explain it better, is that now what you need is an agreement between the NSSA and whoever's going to operate your lower basin facility. And whoever's going to own, if NSSA doesn't own it, the lower basin facility. So I just want to say, like, you can keep the NSSA as the entity. You can keep the NSSA as the entity that owns everything. You can keep the NSSA as the entity that employs all the people, that operates everything. Or, and this was in Ron's report and Gordon's, you can there are some other choices, and that's where the attorney's going to help. But you have the starting block, okay? You have NSSA, you have that entity, you have your joint venture. It's just that you don't have all the other agreements underneath yet. Or maybe
That
that tie it together about who's gonna own it, who's gonna operate it, who's gonna employ the people. So frankly, one of the hardest pieces you have that foundation. Just you need a detail. So you don't have to create another entity. You've got the entity that can do it.
It just requires
Yeah.
more detailed agreements and
Yeah.
operational plans and IGA.
And that was our fault. When I realized when we explained our structure discussion back in September, when we talked about the joint venture, we didn't clarify, you've got it. It's most of it. You just have to do these other details.
And the devil is in those details. And
Yeah.
so that's where your time is going to be spent in the strategic plan. Denny, I think your question is actually an excellent question. Straight off the bat for the attorneys. Now, one of the reasons when you instructed us to go out and talk to folks who were experienced in this world, we were looking for groups that worked with authorities, worked with districts, which are really the same thing, although there are some differences, who worked with 190s like you folks are, and then worked with agreements that pull everyone, a 190 together as a joint entity, where you have agreements that twist and tie folks together in different forms. And so one of the questions we were asking them is this thing as simple as pie? And they said, no, it is more complicated than that. So actually, I think Denny's question is a challenging question to them. Help us understand structurally how this stuff can work. Help us understand who's on it's really three basic questions. Who's on the hook, right? Who's obligated within the four corners of the contract? And that's the real art of it. Who's obligated, who's on the hook within the four corners of the agreement. Then the second piece is, how are those assets and liabilities then dealt with? And then how do you deal with the pieces that are missing, Denny? Because it's clear that there's a piece missing right now. So, team, you asked Denny's question back to these attorneys. How does that work? Have you seen it where a group has stayed together and hadn't had all its parts together yet? How's that worked? Let them kind of help you understand through way of example and how they've done those agreements. So I really think this is the right place to be. That's exactly the right question, because that informs lots of things right now. How you're structuring it, how you're setting it up. Are you a management company, or are you a holding corporation? There's lots of terms of art that are used in all of these things that tie these things together. That's why we really suggest this. So I really think, Danny, to say this out loud, you can answer your question, whether it's exactly what everybody wants to hear or not, or whether it's what the group agrees to. That's the debate you have and the discussion that you have that forms those agreements. So, what I hear you folks saying is, let's keep the team together, let's get these folks in, ask that big question, understand how all these things are put together.
Well put. I just wanted to express for myself, sound like Janet and Ron too, solidarity. We want to remain solid that we're gonna be in your corner as well when it comes to developing the Upper Canyon. One more thing I wanted to say on the discussion of operational plan so that our Marion County friends can hear it. I have one word, and that is affordable. We're not gonna be able to afford $150 water sewer bills in Mill City and Gates, Detroit and Idana.
Yeah.
Detroit is already looking at about $90 a month for just water. And that's what Salem pays for water, sewers, streets, parks, everything all at once. So we're not gonna be able to impress upon the incomes and I want to say there are a lot of lower incomes in our corner of the world up here than there are in the city of Salem. So they get great water at our expense. So it has to be affordable if it's gonna work up here. So keep that in mind for operation plans. Thank you.
Thank
Denny
you.
has his.
Denny, you're on the hook.
Yeah,
again.
thank you. And thank you, Mayor Kirsch, for bringing up that issue of affordability. I think that the other elephant in the room has to do with what Gordon has shared with us over the last couple of months regarding affordability, at least in the Upper Canyon, and the fact that there was consideration given to the fact that Mill City and Gates might somehow merge, their services with the Upper Canyon, which would essentially mean that the Lower Canyon would be subsidizing the Upper Canyon. Now, I will tell you, if I lived in the Lower Canyon and somebody suggested that, I would vigorously bridle at supporting Detroit and Idana from Mill City and Gates. There's got to be a different way. And I guess my point of all this is that if we've got 2, 3, 5, 7 years to think about this, technology is going to evolve. Our lessons learned will create evolvement in our own thinking. And I think we all need to get in our separate little grooves and move forward while we stay together, learning from one another. And let's just see how it works out. But I don't think you'll ever get an enthusiastic support from the Lower Canyon to subsidize the Upper Canyon.
That's kind of like the folks at Salem don't want to put on a fee on their bill to pay for their watershed. But I understand. Brian, you have your hand up there.
Yeah, I just, 2 things I wanted to jump in on. One, so something to keep in mind with Detroit Idana, that's a big plus. Well, a little bit of a step back. If the money that we had received had a longer time associated with it, it would have opened up some other options to consider. But those options take time to develop and then get through permitting and all that kind of stuff. Since we needed ironclad, yep, we know something. We had enough money to do something for Mill City Gates, but that's a discussion for last year. When it comes to Detroit Idana, the current effort is going to do is proof out the viability of some disposal sites, and that's always been the biggest unknown from a permitting perspective for Detroit Idana. So at least in this current effort, we should make progress there, and then that will become a known. What's the permit ability of a couple of different disposal sites? So that'll be helpful there. I do want to take a step back and just ask Laura. There was something said several minutes ago, and I want to check with Laura, or actually maybe it's a Chris Epley question. Does COG have to wait for this funding agreement amendment before they can engage, or before NSSA can engage? Who's our legal firm that we're Cable Houston? Or is that something that they can move on now? Because if we're waiting, we may have a few more weeks of waiting before we can make that happen, right?
Okay, what we could do is prep a supplemental budget so that it would redefine a scope. for them. So legally, you guys would be directing us to do that. So you're directing your funds to go towards something. And then that would give time for that and time for us to start that process up to get them up to speed and on board. Because that will just take a little bit to get them going. And then we could be moving forward on that. But yes, we could do that. It would just make this board directing their funds in that direction. You control your funds. So you can direct your funds, but you have to say it in your budget documents. We have to do it right. You have to dot that I, cross that T. So you could begin to move in that direction.
That goes back to, the question we have as a board, do we want to use our funds to guarantee a payment to start them now? Or do we want to wait until the funds get processed through? That's up.
For clarity, the amendment to the funding agreement is just going to add more money to the funding agreement. It's not waiting for Marion County money to come in and pay for it. It all is just it's going to be added to the pot of money you already have. So there really isn't a, NSSA agreeing to cover it for now. You are operating on a verbal that Marion County is going to come through with this additional 80, but that's really not, it's kind of not the perspective I would use to understand the use of your current funding plus this 80,000.
It's a public budget process question, Brian. That's why Scott keeps looking at me like, well, I'm trying to off the cuff remember their budget categories and whether they are broad enough for them to allocate funds out of that, or whether I think they have to adopt a supplemental budget, because I don't think their budget categories are broad enough for them to allocate out of their existing budget without a supplemental budget, but I will look. So like, it's not, I don't think they had a big broad brush like that said public works, right? And then public works can do what it wants with its budget, more or less. So not more or less, sorry, but I have to look, and they do have reserves, so they could allocate out of reserves, but then I think they're gonna have to do a supplemental budget, but those are just options and that's not me saying that, that's Oregon public budget law, right? How you can allocate it. It's yours to allocate, but you might have to follow a process to do that. But I'll double check. Yeah, to direct it. I'll double check it.
So we can start that process.
Yeah.
Which starts.
Chris actually has something to say.
And so does Janet.
So Janet had her hand up here first, just give a second. Janet, what do you got?
Having been involved with, the city for what? 7 years now, and having also been a government employee, kind of, and I'm not questioning you at all, but, stuff happens and promises need to be moved around or changed. So I kind of am hesitant to vote for it to come out of current budget, just because unintentionally, whatever happens, money disappears. It's one of those looking through the looking glass to see if you can see the truth or see the future, if that money's really gonna come through. So that's all I wanted to say, is I'm concerned about that. We lost what, 88,000 or $188,000 that was actually in the legislative budget. So.
Right. Chris Utley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In relation to the IGA that Marion County Community Services has with NSSA, the IGA is broad enough to allow you to use the 150,000 that you already have pledged from us for legal services. If you're using those legal services to move toward developing, the end product here. So you don't have to wait for an amendment to the IGA to use those funds. So that takes away an external hurdle. All you have is your own internal budget hurdle and your policy decisions as a group as to whether or not to move forward now or wait for the additional funding to come through with a formal amendment in the future.
Okay.
What we'll do is look at your budget and give you a risk analysis on that and just say, this is the things you would have to do from your internal point of view. Because what you're really trying to do at a minimum is direct towards an action, and that is the attorneys coming on board, the ability to sign a contract, the ability to start to engage. So that's what you're directing. That's what you want to be able to direct. Now you just want to do it through the appropriate process. So we can give you just a risk analysis on what you're exposed to, which answers Janet's question. In other words, here's the probability, here's my, my exposure, and this is how we're moving it along. But
Is that something we're gonna see at our next regular board meeting for voting on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That'll be something that we have on our
yeah, we'll put it together.
voting agenda for our next regular meeting, which will be next Monday.
Yeah, I think what we could have ready is, the analysis of whether you could do it out of your existing budget without an amended budget process, and then you would just have to decide if you wanted to do that, to Janet's point about risks, so.
That's
That's
good.
next Monday. That we need to move forward. That is next Monday.
So we have that on. Ken, I see you, is that a hand up you have in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen there? Do you have your hand up, Ken?
You
No.
don't see my hand.
That's
Wait a
it.
minute.
That's that.
Ah, okay.
You're trying to give us the finger.
Okay.
No,
Ken?
gosh, don't do it.
Okay,
You don't see no fingers.
let's go to the item B on our work session discussion, and that's the board rules about communicating with county staff, COG, and lawyers. We want to make sure that as board members, that we don't want to reach out too often with things, wild card questions, stuff like that, that ties up our professionals' time and take them away from the time that they're spending on the projects and stuff like that. Other than myself, I like to have coffee with Brian once in a while, but he's off the clock when we're doing that. Right?
I think this is directed at our new board member. And also just to identify that there's, I think the chair and vice chair can contact the attorney. If you have any questions or you want something on the agenda, you're to contact the chair or vice chair, they'll contact COG. I think it's just
A friendly reminder.
some good advice on how COG is going to charge us. They have every right to charge us when we contact them. So if you put your thoughts together, send them to us, the chair, vice chair, we can contact COG. We'll still get billed, but we're not having 2 or 3 or 4 people contact them at different times. The attorney, oh boy, don't contact the attorney. Please don't do that. We got lucky the last time. Nothing wrong, Ron. You had every great intention of handling something. We got lucky right there. He understands. He's for us. He's with us. So just trying to get everybody to understand that be cautious. I know we're all dedicated. We all have ideas, thoughts, beliefs. We want to express them, but we have to take time. We have to be cautious on what we do.
However, I want to encourage everyone's enthusiasm and stuff like that, and the extra efforts put forth by some board members as well as being recognized as very valuable contributions to this whole thing. So, but like I say, we want to make sure we don't get stuck with extra costs, and we don't want to take up time from other folks that would be spending their time working on other aspects of the project. So what else do we have? Laura, comments from staff?
Yeah, I did want to just add one last piece to
Okay.
your last conversation, just because I think it puts a bow on it. As a COG staff, we do a lot of we do a lot of communication with the county, especially when they need us something for that. But we have either weekly or bi-weeklies with the chair and vice chair. So that way and so I encourage you to go through that, because then we collect it all then, we get it all answered then, dealt with then, and then it gets back onto your agenda, into the public light, which is where it should be discussed, back in front of board, questions answered, and stuff done. So we do have an organized methodology that we use with the chair and the vice chair to share information and make sure that agendas are properly done, and that administrative function of the board is completed for you folks. So just wanted to emphasize, I think it's a great working relationship, where we're glad to be able to do it. I know that we have any issue at all in those meetings, but I think we're able to get the agendas done and get those things addressed as you need them, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I was going to say, as an example, this board has shared, the concern with the rates that have been presented by the consultants, and of course, there's quite a bit of rationale and methodology behind those that assists the process, and yet there's a healthy tension between the costs that have to be included and the costs that our communities can bear. And so Chris Imo had offered to bring Keller in at your November 20th work session to explain some of the O&M costs in more detail, so that the board members can ask questions, poke holes. We kind of joked, Ron and I joked earlier today, why does it take 2 certificated individuals and some techs and brand new pickups for, why isn't it, 1 and 2 and some used pickups, and what's the rationale behind that? And I was explaining that that's the healthy tension between the engineering team that knows what has to be in place, and this public body that knows what your communities can bear. And we need to have a really good shared understanding of that. And so because you as individual board members and in this these meetings have shared those concerns, the engineering team has been able to create time to put together a presentation with the content experts, not off the cuff in a meeting, but in a planned meeting, to come back and talk with you about those. So that's the type of efficiency that I think this conversation you just were having will promote, is it'll ensure that all board members receive the information in a fully baked way. The other thing so thank you to Chris Imo and team for that. And the other thing I was going to offer is that with our new board member, is an opportunity to create an orientation. Ron and I were commiserating that we both came on about the same time and sort of oriented ourselves to this work, with some help. And there would be an opportunity now with Emily to be here to put something together that looks more like a board orientation, like what you would do for a city council member who's coming on board. And so I will be working on that. And if there are thoughts about what should be included, please let me know. She received a fabulous starting orientation, which is the open house at Gates. I thought, God, if we all had that orientation that would have been fabulous. So she has quite a bit so far, but there are just some of the other pieces that we're going to develop, because especially if Idana brings another board member on, or as other board members transition in and out, it will help this body be more efficient in its decision making and its understanding if we have a bit of a board orientation. So anybody that would like to help or like to be involved with that, please reach out to me.
Reach out to the chair and.
Yeah, reach out to the chair. Reach out to the chair. Thank you, Scott, for getting me into protocol. Yeah, so.
We just went through this entire.
So, Mr. Chair, I have one question. The 20th is the start of the Thanksgiving week, and I know people travel and go places. So I just want to kind of bring up to make sure we're going to have enough people here for a board meeting.
Everybody gonna be around on the 20th of November? That is Thanksgiving week.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Denny,
Yeah,
Ken,
Yeah.
okay, sounds like we won't
Okay.
have any problem getting a quorum.
I just wanted to, it's a work session, so we don't need a quorum.
That's true, okay.
Yeah.
Something else that I'd like to get on the agenda for the future is the PR program. It needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
It's part of Keller's contract. We need to address it. And, but we don't need to discuss it right now. It's
Well, we
7,
could,
it's 7:02, but need to address it later on.
To our
we could address it right now, Ken, if you'd like. I have good news. That's why I'm willing to talk about it. So Chris, Imo, do you want to speak to that a little bit? I'll let you have your day in the sun.
Yep.
You can get
Okay.
on.
Yes,
Yeah.
here we are. So yes, we are in the process of bringing on a firm to do exactly that. As part of Keller, Keller's bringing them on as part of their firm as a dedicated public relations firm that has done public utility projects in the past. So we're in the process of getting that on added to the contract right now.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. It's needed. It's well needed.
And the principal of the contractor is named Matt Hasty, and he attended the Mill City open house, and Janet actually spoke at length with him. Others may have as well. And so he came and was invested enough in the project, even though he doesn't have a contract yet, to be here. And to start to listen and learn to where the sensitivities of the communities are. And start to help to answer what questions may be out there, what information needs to be provided. Did a long conversation with Janet about how we get that information to people in these communities, what the best forums are. It's not, one size fits all. It's not just Facebook, and it's not just signs, it's not just flyers. So Janet was instructive, and I appreciated how he listened carefully to her advice. Did you want to say something more?
Well, no, I gave him my card, I believe, with my phone number on it, and told him, call me when you're ready to do stuff, and we can set up, I don't do Instagram and those type of things, but I have access to post stuff on most of the canyon sites, so flyers, Laura offered to go door to door.
I actually will say that we just started a newsletter in Gates, and that'll be sent out quarterly, but in the meantime, Don Mann grabbed a bunch from Chris of the flyers that he had at the open house event. Chris, did you ever get him? I think it was like 300 he got or something. So we can.
We gave.
Yeah.
I just want to know if Janice said, trust me.
I never once said, trust me. Nice
good.
try, Mick.
Hey, then we're safe. Hey. How about KYEC? We can look at everything. KYEC is a good one. So it's great that this is going to be addressed. Thank you.
So did you get your?
I did, yeah. No, I didn't have a question. I saw him kind of like making a face. So I just wanted to check in and make sure he got.
Oh, that's just normal with Ken.
And I did,
Oh, did I make this?
Hey, welcome aboard.
I did volunteer Scott and I to go toward hang
Door to
door hangers.
I'm happy to do hangers. I'm gonna wear a Duke sweatshirt though.
All right.
Yeah, Laura and I go door to door too, looking for, whatever.
Once we have something to share, yeah. So.
We'll definitely stop at your house, and you know why.
Okay. So we're wrapping it up a little bit early tonight, which is always good. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to speak to the good of the authority? If not, I apologize, but we do have another meeting next Monday night. We had to delay our midweek one, or our mid-month one, our work session till tonight, because I was out of town. But the good news is, I did get my elk, so
Yes.
we're all good there.
Does that mean we're all getting a little package?
That means we're all getting jerky this year, finally. Jerky for Christmas.
So, anyway, thank you everyone for attending tonight's meeting, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again next minute. I guess we're to be determined on location. we can have it here at Mill City Hall again, as well as the Zoom factor as well, so. I guess unless somebody wants to offer up their own living room or something, we'll do it here in Mill City's living room. With that, we're gonna call tonight's meeting a close. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.